listening to the Author Inside You podcast, a weekly podcast designed to motivate you to finish writing a book, choose a publisher, and have your work build an audience. Keep listening if you're looking to get propelled into the next chapter of your life. And now, it's the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.
Welcome to the Author Inside You podcast. My name is Matt Rafferty.
And I'm Leah Rafferty.
Joining us today is Kingsley Grant. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist, a motivational speaker, a writer, and the father of two. Welcome, Kingsley.
Thank you, Matt and Leah, for having me here on the show. I really appreciate the invite.
We appreciate you coming on today. Kingsley, the main goal of our podcast is to get people motivated about writing their first book. A lot of people have it in their mind and say, I really think I have this great idea, I want to do something. But it takes something special to get someone to write, I'm really going to do this. So my question to you, I noticed on your website you said that you are a motivational speaker and then a writer. Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, that's a good question, Leah, because what happened for me, I find myself getting ideas out a lot better and easier when I speak. And I find that from there, thoughts come where I may write about something, but it tend to originate from me speaking, whether in conversation or me doing a talk, and then these ideas start spinning off that from my speaking moment. So I see myself, that's my strength, that's my communication aspect of speaking, and then writing kind of come in the second place.
Your first book was called This Was Not Supposed to Happen. Can you tell us a little bit about that book and why did you write that book?
Well, that's a book that really got me into the writing because I knew I had a story to tell. As we all do, we all have stories in our lives and experiences that many times could be the door opener to where we want to go in our lives. And I had a past experience that I encountered as a teenager. And what happened was I felt, how do I not let that experience be wasted? So if something happened, then I want to get that message out to help someone else. So I know it happened to me, but it also happened for a reason. So I figure, well, the only way I can take control of my life and be in control of anything and not have it control me is the power of communicating those things, articulating that idea through writing or speaking. So I began to speak about it, and then I felt, well, how can I share this idea or share my message, my experience? Then the idea of writing came up, and that was kind of intimidating for me because I didn't see myself as a writer, and I figured that I can get my thoughts expressed, as I mentioned earlier, through my speaking. And so what happened was I, with fear and trepidation, decided to start putting my ideas in a book. And that took forever to come to the place it's at right now.
Wow. So once again, like you said, you communicate through speaking, and then this is another way of communication, and you're helping people. It seems like you like to, your basis seems to be to help people.
Yeah, I figure that one of my reasons I believe for being on here on Earth is to motivate people, to give them hope and a future. So I figure what are my experiences in life? And that's what I believe every person have to look at. What are my experiences in life that happened to me that can help someone else? Because I believe that the only way for me to really, truly get something from any experience I have is when someone else's life is being impacted, is being helped, is being encouraged, is to realize they're not the only one. And the only way I can do that is through my writing and speaking.
Very good. So now when you decided to do this, though, how did you, so now you said you want to write, but how did you get this to happen?
I'm a student first, so I love to read, I love to listen to podcasts, I love to just to watch people who are in the area of creation. So it's writing or speaking, I feel as a creative process. So I had people that I admire, and I'm thinking, well, if they can do this, I would ask questions. How did you do that? And I find sometimes the power of in a network of having people around you to ask and not be afraid to, because I wanted to get it out, but I just didn't know how. So I would ask questions, I would read, I would research, because there's so much on the internet. And I said, you know what? If they can do it, what if I tried? And that was where I first began to put my thoughts together and begin to move in that direction.
Well, that sounds good. You're getting me excited. So, let's do this. Okay, good job. Thank you.
I'm wondering about your network. You said you had a network that helped you, get motivated and that you would ask questions. Tell me about your network.
I think so much strongly about the fact that we, as I said, all ships are risen by the rising tide. And I figure that if I don't know something, who do I know that knows something? So I'm a person who loved to connect with people, get to know their stories, and build relationships, because I believe everything rises and falls upon relationships. And so as a person who is a talker, as you can probably see here, and loving to engage with people, I began to reach out and get to just figure out, what are you doing, how are you doing that, and then begin to invite those people in my circle, and we grow together. Then I move to another circle, so to speak, and it's not using them, but it's simply saying we grow together. And I build my network through intentionality. I really am very intentional about what I do and who it is I'm trying to meet, and I'm always trying to find someone who's ahead of me, someone who's alongside me, and then someone who's below me. So I'm always in that movement pattern.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah, that is great. That's a great way of doing it, to helping other people and asking other people for help at the same time.
Because I figure, if we don't have what to give, and the only way to have what to give is after I've given out, I need something to put back in. So I have to figure a way, either through my reading, my research, through my listening to podcasts or other audiobooks and so on, or listen to people. And in my field of psychotherapy as a marriage and family therapist, I hear stories all the time. And therefore, for me to keep on giving out to people, I have to receive myself. Mm-hmm. And I don't know everything, and I have to take the position of a student, and I'm a student first. Then I can get more information that I can keep on giving out. So I find myself as a conduit that the things just flow in and out, and that's where I think life becomes very exciting.
Yeah, I really like the way you think. That's just wonderful. Now, did you have any roadblocks when you decided you have your network and everything and you had your support, but what were some of the roadblocks, or did you have any roadblocks?
I did, because what happened was I have now to go in and dig about a story that I was kind of reluctant to tell, and then you have people who know you in this network who may not know about your story, and the idea is, how do I put that out there? What would they think about me? And the question is, am I an imposter? Am I going to think I know something that can help people, but they're going to take that and leverage it against me? So it was more of a mental roadblock. It was more of an internal, sabotaging type of experience on my side, where I figured that, what if? Who might? And these questions plagued me for a while, until I realized that I had to somehow get over this by taking action. Because my story is that I had a molestation in my teenage years, and then I had to work through all of that and forgiveness and all of that. So I had to, how do I frame that story in a helpful manner, so it didn't become where I was a victim, but I could be a victor over those things. So I figured then that I had to get past that, and the only way I could get past that is to be okay with getting it out there. But like I said earlier, having used my platform of speaking and having begun to tell the story, I began to get accustomed to telling the story. So it's shifting from a speaking now to the writing. But I had to still think about, well, people are going to see it and read it every single day, whereas my speaking is occasionally. But once I broke through that, I think I was well on my way to be okay with telling the story time and time again.
Yes, I see what you're saying. That's good. If you say it out loud and you start telling people, it has to be a little easier. And then maybe if other people start doing this too in their life, just trying to, if they have whatever their idea is or their first book, perhaps as they talk to people, it may become more, maybe they can see it more as a reality also, that they could actually do this.
You might get some face-to-face feedback. Hey, that's a great idea for a book, or I would listen to that.
Exactly. Sure. And also the encouragement when people say, thank you for sharing that story. It encouraged me. It touched my heart. It gave me a permission to talk about my own life. And all of those things really begin to let you know, hey, you're onto something here.
Great. Yeah, I can see how that helped.
Yeah.
So when it came to actually sitting down and writing the book, and you were working on the manuscript, did you hire a copy editor? And if so, where did you find one?
Well, initially I did not, because I didn't really know to that extent yet. All I knew I had to write, so I began to just take a Word document and start writing. And then I just keep on putting ideas down and say, if I get that down first, then I can worry about the second phase, might be a copywriter or an editor and all those different things. But I find taking it in phases was very important to me. And I think sometimes what happens is we worry about, well, I don't have this and that in place, and then we never start at some place. So I only wanted to start first and get it out on paper. And then I did eventually hire someone. But what happened, one of my issues, Matt and Leah, was I, in the initial stage, didn't know who my audience was. Who was I writing to? I wanted to help people, everybody. And as the saying goes, you try to help everybody, you help nobody. So when I wrote that book and I asked a friend to read and to give me some feedback, and he said, Kingsley, who are you writing to? I said, people who have had trauma, people who are in painful circumstances. Yes, but who are those people? And I really struggled with that because I didn't know how to really define. And I think that's so critical to a writing, that you write to a person, to as if you're speaking to them. Because when I'm speaking, that's what I do. I speak to a person in an audience. But I did not transfer that to my writing. So I missed the mark there. But I was so far along, I said, this is my baby. I can't change it now.
Now what?
Yeah, so I felt stuck, and I have attempted so many times because it's not my best work. As a matter of fact, I very rarely recommend that book sometimes because I know it tells my story, but I'm thinking like, oh man, it's so badly written. But you know what? I resisted the temptation to go back and revisit and rewrite it because I want to have that as a remembrance of where I came from.
Well, also I think that's good because since we're talking about people who are, just trying to get these ideas on paper, that shows that that's the beginning, Everyone has to start somewhere, and then as you work on it more and more, you improve, So I think that's good for our listeners to hear.
Well, as Seth Godin says, you have to ship it, right? If you're not embarrassed by your first work, then you waited too long. So you had to do it, and you got it out, and you started helping people, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that's what came to me eventually after struggling through and after working through, and the worry and the concern and what people think and all that stuff. I think that when I began to now think, who might that help, and take it off me, the spotlight, then that shift began to take place. But it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen right away. And it takes time. And I'm speaking now from a person who have written a few more books now since then. But I remember what it was like for me. And my first book was hard because, number one, I had to break past that limiting belief. I had to break past my overly concerned about what people might think and say and start shifting. But that doesn't happen in the first book. I find it happens maybe second, third, fourth book. So I think the idea is just getting it out there is pivotal to our success at any point.
Well, how many books have you written?
Well, I've written 4 books that are in print, and I've written about 3 or 4 ebooks since then.
Oh, that is great. Wow.
Yes.
And how do you figure which ones to be published and which ones should you do an ebook?
For me, it's just a size, so the number of words. If I start writing and have an idea and it's becoming bigger and bigger, and I figure, well, this is a 40, 50, 60,000 word, 70,000 word manuscript I've come up with, then I figure, maybe this might be better as well in both an ebook and a print version. Because some people still, like for me, I can do books in ebooks and read and audio, but when I really want to get something and take away, I need to have a book in my hand so I can mark it and highlight it and all of that,
And take it off the shelf and reference it.
Exactly.
How did you find a publisher, and have you used the same publisher for all 4 of your books?
Yes, I self-publish all 4 of my books, and I use CreateSpace through Amazon. So I found about CreateSpace because I was at one point trying to find someone who could do that for me, and in my research, I came across Create Space, and I again researched how to do the book there. And from that point on, I've self-published my other books as well through Create Space because it's such a very easy format, and it's really a print on demand.
Okay, so it is easy to use, though.
Yes, I mean, once you get past the initial stage of learning, just the structural, the expectations, what they're asking you to do, and then once I've learned that, because I really a learning curve initially, but once I get past that, then it was really easy from that point on.
Good.
So what are you doing to market your book?
Now that's the hard part. It's a good question because what happened is, as we've heard many times, I have learned that writing the book is the easy part. As hard as it is the easy part because the marketing is the most difficult part because I can write a book and like I've done, but then my marketing skills is not great. I have not done a great job of marketing my books. What I do is when I speak, I'll have some copies there and sell at the end of my speech. So as a back table, I do that. I also, when I have my podcast, I will mention that and people can get it on Amazon. But I don't do a great job. As a matter of fact, I was at an event last week and speaking to someone about the very same thing. And the person said to me, Kingsley, you're not marketing your book as you're supposed to, or you should be, right? I said, no, you're right. I have not been. And for some reason, I don't have that strength, that marketing strength down, really in a way that I feel very confident. So
it is difficult because you're marketing yourself in a way. It is difficult, and it's hard. Yeah.
That's it. And that's a good point you're making, Leah, because I will market other people's book and stuff without any problem, right?
Right, exactly.
But talking yourself up seems odd, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does. It feels kind of funny, and especially if you don't want to put yourself like, look at me type of thing, it's challenging sometimes.
Yes. Well, our kids always said when they were younger, I'd say, please don't brag or whatever, and so now they're like, sometimes I'll say something, they said, well, but is that, when we talk about other people or something, they said, is that bragging? And I'm like, well, not necessarily, because they're trying to get their point across. But it is hard. How do you, it's just difficult.
It is. And so what I've done is soft market. Sometimes I've done social media, quite a bit on that. I mentioned my podcast, my blog. If I might write something, I'll reference that and say, hey, I've written a book on this, and I put a link there as well. And then I will tell people about a book sometimes, and they will also, from time to time, make mention of that. And when I do go on podcasts as guests, I will also talk about my book if it fits that audience that the guest is trying to focus on.
How do you create writing habits, or what's your writing schedule like?
As I mentioned before, because I'm not a writer, I find myself being very haphazard in that I really don't have a discipline as I ought to. Well, at one point for me when I was in my writing stage, because sometimes when I have a book idea, I will be disciplined and I will just give myself every single day to write something. And that way I can crank things out. But because I don't write every day, as I say, I'm not a writer first, but I will speak every day. Mm-hmm. So I will find time to look for speaking opportunities to do that more than writing. But when I have an idea that I feel very strongly about, then I will sit down and just crank that out over a short period of time, because I will, I love mind mapping. So I'll map out the ideas, and then I will start writing, or use Scrivener to kind of have the flow that I want to have. And I start writing. Those, when I'm in my zone, I can get it out. But I don't have a discipline like every single day, like some people do who are writers, which is one of my shortcomings in this area that I need to kind of work on some more. But as I said before, it's not my strong suit.
Yes, I see on your 7 tips for writers, one of them is outline your book. So that's what you're referring to? Okay.
Yes.
And I like that you have no perfect book.
Yeah, and that's where I think the major hang-up is for a first-time writer. They want to put, and that's what my biggest issue in my first book. I wanted to put everything I knew in that one book, solve every problem I knew in that one book.
Yeah.
And that was a major mistake. I could have had 2 or 3 books in that first book,
Oh, I see.
Thank you, Kingsley, for being a guest on the Author Inside You podcast. So I just have 2 more questions for you.
Sure.
So what's the best advice you can give our fellow authors who are listening, and how's the best way for our audience to get in touch with you?
Thank you for asking me that question and also giving me an opportunity to have people get in touch with me, Matt and Leah. I appreciate that. I think the best tip, idea, suggestion, strategy, I would say to the person who's a first-time author is basically, remember, it's not about you. Mm-hmm. It's about the people you're trying to serve. And if you can shift away from yourself onto someone else and say, who can be helped and what value can I bring to this person that I'm writing to, then you are more apt to get started because you have what someone needs. And if they don't get that which you have, they might die, either literally or mentally or emotionally. And so that becomes my impetus to get started. And where you can find me on the web is www.kingslegrant.com. So it's KINGSLEYGRANT. So that is my web, and you can go to connect with me on any of my social media platform. That will lead you right there.
Thank you. And I see on your website you said you'll get back to the people who contact you and quickly. So thank you. And then also you can purchase your books on Amazon.
Yeah, on Amazon. As a matter of fact, what I'll do, Matt and Leah, is I'll create a landing page on my site, and for everyone who's listening today, I'll give them a free gift. So just for being a guest on your podcast to your listeners, I'll offer a free gift, and I'll give you the landing page that can be done. You could probably insert in
in our show notes.
Show notes, thank you.
Right.
And make mention of that somewhere that they can get a free gift just by going to that page.
Wow, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
That is great. And it's great advice you gave a couple minutes ago about writing the book and helping someone else, because I think there are so many people out there with thoughts inside their head that can help other people, and they just don't realize it. They just think, well, everyone knows what I know, or I'm afraid to put it down.
Yes.
And to expose
and like
themselves.
You said, they're critical. They don't want to be hurt by other people being critical of their work or whatever. But there's someone, like you said, there might be someone out there who just needs to hear what you have to say.
Exactly.
So, well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being on.
Yes, thank you, Kingsley. It was great having you.
Well, thank you so much for the privilege of being on your podcast. I really appreciate what you guys are doing, and I know that you're giving a great service to people who really want to get into writing. So thank you for offering this service to encourage and mobilize the audience to get into writing and get their message out there.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. And thank you for listening to the Author Inside You podcast. And until next time, write on.
Thank you for listening to the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.